Hello, my name is Kim JongAh, and I'm from Cheongjin, North Korea, originally, and I resettled in South Korea in 2009, and I'm 43 years old. 3 days after I was born, I was actually orphaned, so I did not know my birth parents. And when I was 12 and 13 years old, my adoptive mother and father passed away. And at the age of 17, I was adopted by another set of parents. But a few months after adoption, I had to join the military. I was in the military in North Korea for a total of 10 years. When I was in the military for 5 years, I did not have any menstrual cycle, but it just goes to show how severe and how difficult it was for the typical soldier in the military. Only when I became an officer and things became somewhat easier for me, I began to menstruate only once a year. And so after I was released from the military, I married. I got married to my husband and we had a family. My first child was born without any issues. But while I was pregnant with my second daughter, because of my husband, who was physically abusive, my child was born with a disability. And unfortunately, my second child did not survive more than 10 months. I realized that I cannot stay in this type of environment, at this type of situation. So there was nowhere to go because I had no extended family, because I was an orphan. And so I decided to then escape from North Korea. And when I crossed over into China, I did not know I was pregnant with my North Korean husband. I only found out when I was arrested by the Chinese authorities and after I had been sold into a human trafficking situation. Fortunately, my quote-unquote husband decided to lie and say this is my child, thus preventing me from being repatriated by the Chinese authorities and sent back to North Korea. So I was safe from the threat, but for almost 2 years, I lived in fear of being arrested and being sent back to North Korea.
Hello, my name is Younghee, and I'm originally from Tangcheong in Hamgyong Province in North Korea. I've resettled in South Korea in 2015, and I'm currently 35 years old. I too was orphaned and given up for adoption. My adoptive parents passed away during what is called the arduous march, or the difficult period of suffering and starvation in North Korea. I ended up working, selling, and trading scrap metal in an iron ore mine near my hometown. I escaped because I was caught and arrested for doing illegal activity, and the regime tried to make an example out of me by punishing me. They used me as an example to put fear in other people in the population, so I wanted to escape further mistreatment and punishment, so that's why I fled North Korea. And so the reason I'm holding this leaflet that highlights the activities of the group that I'm a part of, JongAh, is because in 2012 I was actually abducted and repatriated back to North Korea by North Korean agents that crossed the river into China from North Korea. So I'm a victim of what is called abduction repatriation. And so after I was repatriated by the Chinese authorities back to North Korea, the North Korean MSS, the Ministry State Secret Agents, in the process of interrogating me, they would beat me from head to toe with a large wooden plank. I would lose consciousness and they would inject me with some drug that would revive me. They would wake me up and repeat the process. This continued to the point where my appendix burst from the severe beating.
80% of the women defected that are repatriated are defectors who just recently gave birth or were mothers with children that they had in China. And so based on humanity reasons alone, I implore the Chinese government at the minimum to not repatriate defector women who are pregnant or have just given birth and who have children in China. That would in fact get rid of 80% of the human rights violations that happen to these women, because these women are repatriated by China to North Korea. And so another thing I would like to add in closing is the fact that China's policy of forced repatriation also hurts its own citizens, the Chinese fathers that are left behind to deal with the situation. So that's what I would like to remind the viewers, and also to plead with the Chinese government to stop its policy of forced repatriation.
Hello, my name is Owen Young, and I'm a counseling supervisor at the KCPA, or the Korean Counseling Psychological Association. I'm also an adjunct professor at the Korean National University of Transportation, and I deal with the whole issue of counseling and providing mental help to the North Korean defector women. I was actually involved with counseling college students and youth in Seoul, and then one day I read a thesis that dealt with the issue of helping North Korean defectors, and I realized that, as a woman and as a mother, this group of people, these defectors, particularly from North Korea, and women, needed this type of psychological mental health counseling provided to them. And so for the North Korean defector women, the experience that they had living life in North Korea, and the process of defection, leaving North Korea, and the experience of having lived in China was all a result of these women having psychological trauma. And so I met many defectors, whether they have resettled in South Korea for 1 year or they've been in South Korea for 10 years. They all suffer from PTSD and require treatment from the PTSD that they are suffering from. So this type of PTSD and the trauma that they suffer from prevents them from properly being resettled in South Korea, for them to live properly in South Korea and live in a life of freedom. So instead of seeking help, these women defectors, they turn to alcohol, or they suffer great depression or anxiety, and they don't really try to seek help to deal with the issues that they are facing. So I believe because these defectors and what they have suffered through is unspeakable for many people to understand or to grasp, they don't want to talk about it. So the first step is to provide a safe place or an environment where they can slowly open up, and open up to people that they can trust, and to start revealing and talking about what they went through.